road washouts and all that different stuff, so that it's in a category of its own and it's not being taken out of the road agent's budget as far as general operating costs, or do we want to leave it as it is and go from there?
Well, I have two thoughts. First of all, as I was going by the station last night at 7:30, the midnight, the lights were on in your office, and you know, in our talks, you know, FEMA, you spent a few hours, and that's an understatement. I look to you as to what you recommend, because you've kind of been the point man dealing directly with FEMA and whatnot.
Well, I feel that during this whole thing, we did not have a good idea of, you know, what was actually used on the emergency side of things, as far as, you know, the recovery of the brush and all that different stuff. It was all kind of like intermingled, and there was quite a process to go through to select that all out. If it was separated out and we did a process to make sure that that was, you know, looked at properly, each storm or each occurrence that something like that happened, it would be easier with the paperwork that we did. And the money would be coming out of something that you could keep an eye on what was actually used for emergency wise versus, you know, whether it was snow plowing or something else that had gone on. But that's one more budget thing that we would have to face.
What is the board's thought?
How often have we seen that kind of activity?
Well, we had Stella,
Right.
and then sometime towards July, they did like $30,000 worth of filling washouts, culvert things because of another storm. But in that particular case, Carroll County was not even recognized because there wasn't enough cost associated with our area versus, you know, towards Sugar Hill and those different areas which were recognized. But we actually apparently spent more money in that particular section than we did with Stella with the cleanup type of thing. So that would give you
I'm thinking back to previous years.
it all depends on the year as far as, you know, how badly we get hit with storms.
Since you've been on the fire department, I think it's maybe every 5 or 6 years we would have had the ice storm of '98 or something.
We've had a couple
78.
tornadoes,
Wind-
mostly it's
Microbursts.
wind shears, microbursts, and things like that.
A couple of years ago, I remember out on the islands, we got hit with buildings that were collapsed and whatnot. So, we seem to about every 5 to 10 years have a significant.
I mean, it's not every year, and we've dealt with whatever we needed to, but
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little ambivalent about putting up another line item in the budget that's accessible for, I mean, where do we draw the line on the
Right.
occurrence? If FEMA isn't gonna reimburse us for an occurrence, then is it just something that we should have taken care of on our own anyway?
Right.
And then who decides whether or not the rainstorm of March was significant enough to dip into an extraordinary
Right.
fund?
right.
So I think it would take a lot of work to try to figure out how to control it, so it just didn't become another
Area for
another highway budget.
Yes.
And we're just gonna call snowstorms over 6 inches a disaster. I mean,
Yes.
we gotta be careful about it.
Well, and you got two separate related issues with another line item. Putting an account in there to accumulate these things is, can be helpful as long as we're putting the right, making the right charges into that line.
Right.
But in terms of budgeting for that,
How do you know? what the
it may
budget's
be
for?
just a zero budget line that you put in there as a place to accumulate it, because there's no way
Or it's a placeholder.
that you can predict what those kind of costs are.
are.
Right.
Right, so, you know, budgeting money for that is, would be a difficult thing to do.
Right. And I-
Having a line to put it into is easy to add, but then you come back to, you know, is it being used precisely for the kind of costs that we want to go into there, or are they infrequent enough that when we get into a situation where there might be FEMA money available, we just bite the bullet and say, all the detail is there in the normal accounts that they're charged to. It's just a matter of going in and pulling it out.
Which I have no problem with, but where I'm in the process of finishing an emergency management budget, I didn't want to, how come you didn't look at this?
I mean, I guess the other, and there's some interesting talk about designated reserve funds at the meeting we went to. And we could actually establish a fund that was just for these purposes. But it still takes a lot of management, and if you have the fund available, does that make the effort to get reimbursed by FEMA less likely? Or, I mean, are you gonna work as hard at it? I mean, I'm sure you work hard at everything, but there are a lot of questions involved in this. I probably should think
Well, you
about it.
And personally, some days I don't feel that the amount of time that we put in to try to get a certain amount of money back is worth it.
Yeah.
And I've been very open about that.
Well stated, Chief, well stated.
But I feel that obviously we need to try to
Yeah.
do our part as far as that goes.
And one more question for you. On the same topic, HEB put in some paperwork in there asking if you wanted them to do a proposal for the Sodom Road repair so the weight limit could be lifted. And I believe you tabled it last meeting, and we're gonna ask that about it.
Well, we were gonna ask them if it impacted the fire department, which you
Oh,
said
okay,
it did.
Yeah.
okay, so that was,
Yeah.
that was
Yes.
tabled,
Right.
for further discussion. I don't know if that's
Right.
something you want to discuss.
So there's a
now.
temporary repair that can be done to,
What HEB has suggested is they could put a proposal together for us for a repair to the bridge, to bring it up to normal weight limit. And what we're gonna end up with from them is, you know, for X number of dollars, your bridge can be fixed, not rebuilt the way you would.
And it's
with
not
the-
reimbursable.
That's,
So this
that's
is
right.
just a repair until it gets on the bridge,
Yes.
or gets
Right.
put up. on the
2025 or
Right.
2026,
bridge.
whichever.
So this money is just a stopgap measure,
Mhm.
which could, I thought the number I was hearing was $80,000, but maybe that was some other number, but I thought.
Well,
Now, as far as bridges wise, where that one got reduced, how bad is Tuftonboro Neck compared to that?
My take on this is that there's no additional concern on Tuftonboro Neck,
Okay.
because the state went around last month, the month before, and took a look at all the bridges and sent us a letter that said, hey, this bridge needs to have its weight limit reduced.
Okay.
We didn't hear anything from them on Tuftonboro Neck Bridge that I'm aware of, which, of course, it's a different construction.
Right.
Uh,
So
And
it's not,
It would be a different discussion too, because there's no secondary way to get out
right,
of
it
there.
was only
Yeah.
one way in, one
That's
way
right.
out.
So, I mean, next year they may red list it and say we gotta reduce the weight, who
Right.
knows?
There's
Whenever that
another,
happens, we're
there's
gonna have to
another
do something.
interesting wrinkle. It's 80%, we build it and 80 return, I'll stop. Remember when Bill Stockman was selectman, they had an issue with County Road Bridge with the vendor that went bankrupt or something, and I don't know if that's the right word, and that was delayed. And then High Street, the state said, if I remember correctly, we'd rather do it ourselves, and they came at $35,000 over cost. And 8 years ago, the bridge into the trailer park was to be redone. That's a special, very unique rock structure, and guess what? It never has been done, type thing. And now we bump into these two projects here, and he's, I don't want to say been on their case, but he's been vigilant. Gee, we're willing to do it a little bit earlier. How about before 2025, getting to it? Oh no. And last year, the money was cut out of bridges altogether for the state. They put it back in this. So, dealing with FEMA, that there's a lot of balls in the air here.
No, I'm assuming that that is more of a bridge than a culvert, like down in Tufton Road Act.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Tufton Road Act's just a big culvert. And that's not to say that there isn't some deterioration going on, but what we have going on the Sodom Road Bridge is that the concrete is actually
Spoiling.
breaking down on the end where it rests on the support, and that's what's causing the concern.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Next will be transfer station. Welcome back, sir.
Morning.
How's everything in Florida?
Outstanding. Got spoiled with the,
Was your family affected much, or did they just move out?
no, he evacuated inland a little bit, so he spent the storm with his boss. And they lost power for 4 or 5 days, but nothing
Well,
major.
they're trying to catch up with us in Melbourne.
Corey, do you have another copy? Do you have 2 copies or you don't?
You need that one?
Yeah, I'll get it to you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and start wherever you want.
The monthly totals for September, we have 9 solid waste compactors and 13 C&D containers. So there is no let up on the higher rate of activity for Sandy. We're still pushing it through. We did ship out one load of scrap metal. I don't have the weight yet or the exact revenue. I'm guessing it's going to be around $650. We're up about $20 a ton on the price of scrap metal, which is one of the few things that have gone up. So it's good for us. We sent out 3 30-yard plastic containers, which is down a little bit, and we'll start declining on sending those out. So we're right about on track as we were last year with plastic. Total revenue at the end of September is approximately $78,027. This is $25,000 higher than the same time last year. 2 major contributors, that was the aluminum shipment we had, and also more construction debris revenue. I have submitted before I left, the 2018 budget. I have it all set to go, so whenever you want to review, I'm prepared to do that. With the one caveat is, obviously we're doing this fairly early. There are a couple things that will affect, may have to modify a couple lines in the budget before the end of the year. One in particular that I know of already is the people that do the landfill monitoring. Because of this new PFAS sampling requirement, they put in a proposal that you all approved to the state. It looks like the state's accepted that proposal, or is in the process of accepting that proposal. And they currently have a letter to you, our Stantec rep has a letter to you with a proposal which I recommend approving. It's going to increase the price in next year's budget line from what we already had established by an additional $3,200. It'll be a grand total of $12,600 on the line versus what we have I don't want to make any changes until we actually do this, but part of that's going to be for work that's actually done in November, but not going to be billed until next year. It's going to be a one-time.
It takes a while for it to be tested and go through
They
the,
have to gotta go through the testing, they have to get all the analysis, the cost of doing all that, and it takes them a couple months to get the bills
now,
together.
the
So,
gentleman is from Tuftonboro, who works for this company, right, Dave?
Dave, all one, all one,
And I know that this company speaks DES.
yes.
Like this.
They've done very good for us, and they've been very,
Would you please continue the following? It took you 2 years to encourage the corporate headquarters back in Canada
right,
to get us the bill in the calendar year.
right.
You remember, and you worked very vigilantly on that and didn't lose your cool.
Right.
Can you reinforce that with them?
Yeah, and I'd like to, I'll read you what it said. Work conducted in this contract we build at a time, obviously flexible because it's a last minute thing, and they want to get it done this fall. And he's basically apologetic for the fact that we won't have that increase in the bill until next year. The work for this project will be billed no later than December 21st, 2018, so as to be completed within the town's calendar year fiscal cycle. So he's already back on, stating that they will get it in the.
It's a minor point in the contract, but
Exactly.
that it affects budgeting.
Yeah, I was adamant about that, because you can't budget. I mean, you look at facing the, for an emergency, you can't predict and you can't budget, so. But he's been very flexible, and, so that will have an impact on the budget. And there may be, one or two other bumps, a little bit. If construction to goes even higher, we may bump a little bit more on that, but, than what I've recommended in the proposal. But I'll explain all that in detail when we sit down and go through the budget, the specific budget proposal. I also submitted 4 CIP entries, as requested before I went on vacation. One for the cable for 2018, which is next year. It's the only one that will take effect for next year. We are still in deliberations with Spectrum. Lloyd and I are meeting with the Spectrum rep tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So they have come forward with a pretty specific number, and we'll see how much of that number they're willing to kick into the pot to do the connectivity. I submitted a CIP proposal for weight scales for 2019. For the initial look at it, I have some information back from NRA and New Hampshire the Beautiful. They're willing to put in up to $5,000 in the grant money for weight scales. There's a lot of advantages to having weight scales, and most of the transfer stations that are experiencing the same thing have come to the same conclusion and have put in weight scales.
And you have a contact in Auburn, right?
Yes. Well, one of the guys that works for us here is
Extended family.
Extended family is a secretary for one of the scale providers.
I used to live in Auburn, and I recognize the name of that company as reputable.
But there's a couple of companies, Fairbanks Scales, and that company down in Mass. So, we'll get the specific information, but I just wanted to get it on a placemat for future consideration. The compactor renovations, 2019 for number 1, that's well over, it's probably 5 years over.
These are the ones that are in the building?
That are in the solid waste compactors.
Now, if I remember, you lucked out on rebuilding.
Right. We had a piston for the main drive that was leaking, and we discarded the piston. They took it out, discarded the piston, ordered a new one. We were waiting on the new one. They sent us, it wasn't the right size. They don't build that specific piston anymore in the correct size, so we scrambled and got back the old piston.
Rebuilt.
And had it retooled and rebuilt, which will last, but it's not an extensive last. So, you know, we're already numerous years past the 15-year recommended rebuild or replace compactor. So I would stay or look pretty hard at trying to stay at that. You know, we may slide it 1 year or so, but I wouldn't press it.
Those are over 20 years old.
Yes, and 15 years is their lifespan.
And they're always working under pressure.
Right, so, you know, I would try to stick with that if we can, and then I have the storage facility out to 2020 to start. That's assuming that the other buildings are somewhat wrapped up by 2020. I have a meeting with the CIP on Wednesday, and I'll discuss in detail the cable one, and then, you know, basically what's already in the books for the rest of them. And that's it. The other thing I have is that the new hazardous waste program, he's given us a draft of the increase in the price, and I think it went up $49
Is this for next year?
for next year. So
Did the poster you had makeup work well? I've heard positive
it
comments.
worked very well. There was a little bit of newness and mistakes made, because when you say the town garage, a lot of people misinterpret what the state garage is and what the town garage is. So we had people going to the Moultonboro State Garage down by the entrance to their dump facility or transfer station facility, and Ospey, we had them going over to east of Ospey versus into the center of Ospey there. So,
I followed up. They
but they
still,
eventually found it.
they still could use the 6 dates in Wolfboro.
Wolfboro, yeah.
I know of 6 people that went there and just paid by the weight, and there was none of this ticket business and
Right.
and whatever. Any questions for Clyde?
So, if you have a question on your weight scale project submission, you put
Okay.
in for 2019,
Correct.
and,
I anticipate that sliding a year, but.
okay, I think we identified before that there's some significant benefit to weighing
Yes.
material as it comes in. So I'm wondering why we wouldn't want to target getting the scales in as soon as we could.
Well, there's a lot of issues that there's no way I could get done before the budget proposal would be put in. There's a lot of requirements that are subsets of the weight scales. You put weight scales in, there's labor impacts, there's personnel impacts, there's facility impacts, because you have to have an indoor heated area where the person can come across the scales, and that facility's got to, you know, so we're gonna have to construct some type of facility that's heated, that has electricity, that can house the scale reader, and there's a lot of things that go along.
Infrastructure.
The infrastructure that goes along with it, that was gonna take some planning and consideration, and decisions made beforehand, let alone where exactly are you gonna put the scales?
And then it means dedicating someone to that location.
Absolutely, so that has a labor impact. And so my thought being, instead of trying to rush it and put it in being half prepared, I'd like to have the time to sit down and really think this out, and have discussions with you all about, because that's gonna be a change to our process, which is not a minor change, it's gonna be a major change.
Now, can these scales be used to weigh the empty trucks that come in?
Absolutely. Let's say,
And you spend a lot of time
and it's also,
reviewing that.
right, it's also a revenue stream for not just us, but it'd be a revenue stream for us in the fact that if you remember back 4 or 5 years ago when we were having problems being shorted on our loads weight-wise, because we have, you know, we can individually weigh each bale, and then I keep a track of all those weights we added up, and of course that's supposed to be the total weight that goes in the truck. Well, we don't have that truck scale, so the trucks would come in, we'd load them up, they'd go down, and then they'd come back, you know, 6 weeks later and say, oh no, you're 3,000 pounds short, you know? So you get shorted $1,500 on this shipment. You know, imagine multiplying that over all of the transfer stations that don't have weight scales. That's a very lucrative possibility for whoever's paying
Sure.
at the other end of the spectrum. So what I started doing, which is what led to the downfall with Empire, and we were one of the first people that fired them, was I said, okay, I want an independent scale reading. I want you to stop in Moultonboro, and I want you to get your truck weighed empty and provide me the ticket. Have Moultonboro provide me the ticket. And then after I load you up, you go right to Moultonboro, you get weighed again, and now we know exactly how much is on that truck.
Isn't it amazing?
And Empire stopped coming. Whenever we demanded that on the order, they wouldn't show up. So that was the first indicator. But a lot of people do that where they don't have the volume, so they don't want to spend the money to put in those scales. They will use other facilities to have that done. Okay, that's just for shipments out like cardboard, aluminum, those kind of things. Obviously, we can't do that with construction debris. I can't send, you know, Joe Bag of Donuts, the contractor, over to Marlboro to get weighed empty,
Right.
and then come back full. So the advantage to us is we could make some revenue from other areas. The state police may want, you know, to bring some
Trucks in.
or you know, again, we have to be careful about what we want to open it up to, because we don't want to, you know, it's a small town operation, we don't want to make it a commercial.
Well, the other thing is, we're open for limited hours. So
correct.
somebody who's looking for a truck scale, you know, ideally 24-hour scales are what they need,
Right.
because the guy's coming through at 3 o'clock in the morning and he's gonna get his weight, yeah, that
Right.
sort of thing. And,
Well, when I did the shipments, I requested the pickups on the days that Moultonboro was
Right.
open,
right,
so I could get the.
yeah, but in terms of a general truck scale.
Yes.
Because we only have limited hours, it's,
Right,
it's useful when we're open, but,
right.
Yeah.
Now, it has implications that you could use later on too. Let's say we want to adjust the amount or type of material that's put in the compactors, because it's the most expensive way to get rid of stuff. We don't have mandatory recycling. So all kinds of things can end up in that. And all kinds of amounts can end up in the compactor. There are places that weigh, and you have to pay over a certain weight. You know, if you come in and you have 400 pounds of material, you know, let's say they give you the first 40 pounds or 50 pounds of material. Drop across the scales.
Well, you know, here's where,
All I'm saying is that's not what we want to look at, but
right.
possibilities are available.
one of the things that your people have very nicely done, especially the per diem ones, is when people come in, they don't sit there and rattle off the statistics, but they ask the people, can they take their 6 packs of glass down and put in glass? Now,
Right.
it's $1.35 to throw it away in the compactor, and it doesn't compact.
Right.
It's $85 a ton for you to haul it off, and oh, by the way, the roadage, you can get 14 yards of it back. So,
Right.
and here's where your staff has worked. They're not the police, and they're not at war with these people, but they're changing the
Well,
culture.
yeah, you also realize who you can, you know, I mean,
Yes.
you get to know everybody, so it's, you know, who you can say stuff to and who's gonna get upset when you
Yes.
say it, so. You know, we promoted it all opportunities, but all I'm saying is it gives you a lot of flexibility and things you can do in the future. Wolfbrook doesn't have scales.
No.
They have brought stuff to us numerous times to weigh on our pallet scale.
I was talking with Adam, who has taken on other responsibilities, Adam Tasker, and he emphasized again about how you've worked hand in hand with him, you know, taking load, 3 departments take loads of aluminum and save.
Well, that's what he did.
But he's thinking maybe 2 or 3 towns would go in on scales and each could save a little bit, so,
Yeah.
and I know you've talked to him about it.
Right. You know, he ended up with the same problem that we had after we had it. That's why he brought the stuff down here to weigh it, so he could get, you know, an average weight. So he could go back to the company and say, here, you short.
Anything else for Clyde? Thank you, sir. As usual, nice job. Next we'll have Rod Wood, the assessor, come in. Thank you for waiting, sir. It's a busy day. You know everybody here, right?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? So you want to discuss the polls, is that what this was concerning? I'm sure, poll utility values.
Yeah. And there's a couple of new ways of doing it. And why don't you educate us?
Okay, yeah, last year the House passed House Bill 1198, which specified that the DRA would develop a poll utility per unit assessment for towns to use, and a formula that was to be used of 2% depreciation a year with a 20% residual. So if a pole cost $1,000, the cheapest that would ever be is $200 is what it would come out to. So that was implemented this year. The DRA sent out their spreadsheet of pole cost and conduit cost to be used. Sanssouci feels that the DRA does not take into account all the costs that are incurred in putting up a pole. So he developed his own unit cost, which he implemented for their town here as to what he came up with for a cost if he was to use his, and what he would develop if he would just use the DRA values. He has contacted the DRA, wanted to know how they came up with their number. As of the date of his letter, he had not received any information to back up their number. So he left it up to the towns to decide, do you want to use my value or do you want to use the DRA value? It's about a $700,000 difference in valuation. So,
For Tufton Road.
for Tufton Borough itself, yes. So,
What are the other towns that you're working with?
the other towns have used DRA values. That's what they use for their straight across the utility values anyways. So I don't have any other towns at this point that are using Sanssouci for utility values.